Get him added in right now. Let's not play around with my man's time because he's being gracious bringing it on here. So for those of you who don't know, Ohio State had a quarterback battle that extended all the way into fall camp. Not the first time that's happened under Ryan Day, I would imagine, but it was relatively unique to see one of the nation's premier powerhouses extend a quarterback battle all the way well into August. Our man Jeremy Birmingham joins us. He's a recruiting analyst and photographer covering Ohio State for the podcast OSU and Ohio State Rivals. What's up, man? How you doing, Berm?
Hey, I am doing well. Long day. Obviously, Ohio State announced a quarterback today. It wasn't entirely a surprise how they decided to do things, but as you mentioned, for Ryan Day, this is a little bit different than he's had to deal with in the last 5 years of being a head coach, because in previous years, it was pretty cut and dried. You knew Justin Fields was going to be your quarterback. You knew C.J. Stroud was going to be your quarterback in 2021 and 22. So this debate, this competition was a little bit different.
Yeah, and it was a real competition, it sounds like. I thought it was very interesting to hear out of, Ohio State that they polled all of the coaches about a week ago, wasn't it, Berm? Where they went through and they said, hey, do you like Devin Brown? Do you like Kyle McCord? Which of these quarterbacks do you think we should play with? And according to Day, it was relatively split. Kind of take us through this battle all the way back to the spring, Berm. How truly competitive has it been?
I think it's been more competitive than people would have anticipated back in April. Kyle McCord is the class of 2021 5-star from Philadelphia. Devin Brown is a class of 2022 5-star from Corner Canyon in Utah. By that measure alone, people would have expected McCord to sort of separate. He has an extra year in the program, but both of those guys have been playing behind C.J. Stroud. And for Kyle McCord, he did have one start as a true freshman against the University of Akron, where he threw for 300 and some yards and 4 touchdowns, but he hasn't had an opportunity to really get a lot of playing time since. When Ohio State has put him in the game, it's been a lot of just very vanilla stuff, run the clock out type of work. And because of that, heading into this spring, I think people would have expected that he would have been ahead of where Brown was. And it wasn't as separated as people thought. Then Devin Brown hurt his hand and broke his thumb at the end of spring, missed the Ohio State spring game, missed a couple weeks going into summer. And again, when you hit fall, people then would have thought because of that Kyle McCord would have a big gap. But Devin Brown's athleticism, I don't want to say it. He's got this very unique it factor to him. From the minute he got to Ohio State, the people in the building have mentioned that he's very Joe Burrow-esque in just his personality and his characteristics. And so there's been this push by him to just keep making it closer and closer and closer. But in the last 2 weeks, Ryan Day said today, it's been Kyle McCord because of his consistency that has elevated and put himself in a position to be the starter for Saturday against Indiana, but did say Devin Brown will play and play a lot, and I expect them both to play a lot in the first 3 weeks.
I was about to say, when I hear that one young quarterback sustained an injury in the spring, but when he is healthy, dude is just running that guy down is what it sounds like from all reports. It sounds like Devin Brown has been practicing exceptionally well, had an injury, still running him down in fall camp, but hey, we're going to give McCord the shot. Do you think this quarterback battle, if you will, extends, not well into the season, but into the season?
I think it will go probably through the first 3 weeks. Ohio State opens at Indiana on the road, so it is a Big Ten conference game this Saturday, which adds a little bit of a unique wrinkle to this. They then come back home and play FCS, Youngstown State, and then Western Kentucky, who, while Western Kentucky is a very good Group of 5 program and one of the better offenses in the country, defensively, they're not going to be much of a test for Ohio State. And so I don't think you're going to get a real apples-to-apples comparison with these guys unless you put them in positions where they're competing in like-to-like situations. So there's been some discussion about how this is going to work. Ryan Day has not said exactly how he intends to deploy them against Indiana, but some believe that he'll do 3 series. Some think he'll go quarter by quarter. We just don't really know yet. And he said it's just going to be a matter of feel on Saturday. But I expect that they will both play a lot in the first 3 games of the year before Ohio State heads to South Bend and Notre Dame on September 24th.
I'm curious, how have they been doing this quarterback competition, Berm? Have they been giving kind of one guy one day? Like, hey, today is Devin's day to go with the ones. Or has it been like, hey, Devin's going to get, the first group, and then Kyle's going to get the next, series? How have they been, handling these reps? I know at Georgia, for example, the place that we cover here, it's a day-by-day thing. If there's a true, battle at a position, one guy gets it one day to fully get lathered and work with that ones unit, then the next guy gets the next day. How's that quarterback, battle kind of worked out and transgressed, for up there at Ohio State?
I think it's actually been pretty interesting, Brooks. What they've done is essentially run every practice as a split squad for the last month. And so they're both running every rep. Now, sometimes they're running it with the ones, sometimes they're running with twos. Marvin Harrison will be with Kyle McCord, and then the next day or the next drill, he'll be with Devin Brown. So they've just been rotating it so that the guys are getting the same number of reps, but they're not getting it behind or with the same offensive line, with the same receiver. So Emeka Ibuka and Marvin Harrison have essentially been on different teams for the last month, and the tight ends have been split up, the running backs have been split up, the offensive line has been split up, just to make sure that Devin and Kyle get as many like-to-like snaps as they can, both of them being put in positions where they're behind sort of a makeshift offensive line, where the Ohio State defensive rush is in their face. And so it's been a lot of good work for them. But it is interesting because we don't know exactly what they're going to look like with the ones, and we won't know that until Saturday.
All right, Berm, replacing 2 offensive tackles, replacing a starting quarterback, replacing a slot receiver they didn't play a lot last year, replacing a defensive end that was a third-round draft pick. A lot of, not necessarily holes. It's Ohio State. They reload. What's the biggest concern entering 2023 for you, Berm?
I think even though most of the conversation is about the quarterback, I think Ryan Day has earned the pass, so to speak, when it comes to doubting or worrying about that position. I don't think anyone's really worried about Kyle McCord or Devin Brown being good once they get in there and play. So the biggest question mark is the offensive line, because not only are you replacing Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones, who's had an unbelievable NFL preseason, and you're also replacing Luke Whippler at center, who's also in the NFL now as a draft pick of the Browns and playing very well in the preseason. So you're replacing 3 out of your 5 starting offensive linemen, and including the highest drafted offensive tackle a year ago in Paris Johnson. So the Buckeyes have guys in place. They have a starting lineup. They know who they are. It's guys who are highly ranked players. Josh Fryer, a 4-star out of Indiana. Carson Hinsman, the number 1 ranked center in the class of 2022 out of Wisconsin. And then at left tackle, this is sort of the question mark I think people will look at, is a guy named Josh Simmons, who's a transfer from San Diego State. And he was not the best offensive tackle in the Mountain West. So he's a guy that they've retrofitted to. He's never played left tackle before, and he gets to Ohio State, starts working out, and they move him to left tackle, and he's going to be the guy there. So there's a lot of people who think he's got the athleticism to be really good there, but he doesn't have the tape, so people are sort of on edge looking at that. Defensively, depth-wise, they've got more than they've had in the last 5 years. You lose Zach Harrison, as you mentioned, but you have JT Tuimoloau returning. Yeah. Jack Sawyer, a former 5-star defensive end, played at the Jack last year, a hybrid linebacker spot. They moved him back to defensive end. He'll be there full-time. You've got really good players in Kenyatta Jackson, a top 40 player in his sophomore season behind them. Caden Curry, a top 100 player. And then you've got a really good defensive line or defensive tackle group with Michael Hall, Tyleik Williams, Hero Kanu, transfer Taiwan Malone from Ole Miss. Like there's a lot of dudes to run in and out, but the question mark is offensive line without question.
Yeah, it's funny. I studying them year over year, last year and the year before, it's like carbon copy the offensive line. It's like, damn, how many career starts at this point is what I got to. Like when evaluating them for the Peach Bowl, I was like, I've seen all 5 of these guys forever, it felt like. I mean, DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson. Paris started at like 3 different spots during his years at Ohio State, didn't he? Right guard, left guard, and left tackle?
Yeah, and he only played 2 years, really, which is what makes it pretty improbable. His first start at Ohio State was in the national championship game against Alabama in the shortened 2020 season. So he got thrown into the fire there. You still, though, I mean, even though you're replacing 3 starters, Matthew Jones, who's going to play left guard for Ohio State's in his sixth year. So he's played a ton of football. Donovan Jackson, the right guard, will be playing his 3rd year. He was the number 1 ranked offensive lineman in the country when he came out in 2021. So you've got talent there. It's just a little bit unproven. And for all the depth Ohio State has everywhere else, the offensive line depth is a concern. I'm sure safeties are deep, corners are deep, 5 deep at running back, 9 deep at wide receiver, 5 deep at tight end. It's just the offensive line.
I'm sure we'll talk to you before November, but if you could, preseason predictions, how does that game against Michigan work out? And I know Penn State's good this year. By the way, can you explain the Penn State hype? Everybody's like, Penn State finna win a natty. What's going on here?
They're really good. They bring back a lot of guys who are young and explosive players, especially in the backfield. This all depends on 2 things. If James Franklin can get out of his own way, which he's had struggles to do, he's not proven himself to be a very good big game coach, makes poor decisions in big moments. And if Drew Aller, the 5-star quarterback, is what people think he is going to be, if he's any good, they can be really good. They play Michigan at home. They got to travel to Ohio State, but they're going to have a good team. They're a top 10 team in the country. They've returned maybe the best offensive tackle in the country in Olu Fashanu. They've got a really good depth on the defensive side of the ball and superstar level players at each position level in the secondary. You have Kalen King at linebacker. You've got a really good group with Abdul Carter leading the way. And you have Chop Robinson at the defensive end position, who's an extremely explosive and dynamic edge rusher. But you still have James Franklin as your head coach. And so until he wins one of those big games, it's hard to feel too good about it.
Ohio State, Michigan is going to be professional with his shots at folks. I couldn't be like that. I'm like, what you got, James Franklin? Burns like, but it's James Franklin.
I mean, the record's there. I think he's 1-15 or something against top 10 teams in his career. So, and that was against Ohio State, where they blocked a field goal with 2 minutes left that returned it for a touchdown to pull off an upset in 2016. So, he very well would have been fired after that year if he didn't get that blocked field goal. So it's interesting how his career has turned out. But Ohio State, Michigan is going to be a bloodbath, one way or the other. There's going to be a lot of physical football. I think Ohio State could go 11-1 in the regular season and make the playoff. I think they're going to win at Michigan, but I think the real challenge for them is actually going to be at Wisconsin in late October. They play them the week after Penn State. It's at night. There's a lot of emotions coming off the Penn State game the week before. Luke Fickell, getting a chance to coach against his alma mater at night in Madison. That place is crazy. If I'm sure you've never been there, but it's a madhouse, and they do a great job there with their offense. I think it's fascinating to see how Fickell's offense evolves. What Wisconsin is known for with Phil Longo now as the offensive coordinator, and they've still got Braylon Allen, the running back, coming back, who's one of the best players in the country. So it's going to be a fun team to watch. Tanner Mordecai from SMU is their new quarterback. So there's a lot of moving parts, but the Big Ten and the Ohio State schedule specifically is difficult. The Buckeyes have to play at Michigan, have to play at Wisconsin, have to play at Notre Dame, have to, play Michigan State, who are up and down at times, but they got to travel to Purdue, which is a weird spot to play. It's like a vortex of hell in West Lafayette. I don't understand the place. It's got this strange vibe around it. You walk into West Lafayette, and if you've ever seen Stranger Things, I imagine that's what it is.
Sounds like Auburn. Auburn's got a spooky vibe about it for opposition teams.
It's the sun's never out. It's always 45 degrees. It's always 30-mile-an-hour winds. I don't understand it. It's like the Upside Down from Stranger Things.
He is Berm. He goes by @Berm on Twitter. Hey, how'd you get @Berm, by the way? Oh, you've been there since March of 2009.
No, you want to know the funny story, though? Here's the deal. There's a guy on Twitter years ago. So this was 2015. I was like, I need to get this name. I found the guy who had the name @Berm. I looked at his followers. He had 2 of them. I found one of them on Facebook and then linked up his name to them on Facebook, messaged the guy on Facebook. He was this guy in Canada whose name had nothing to do with Birmingham, which is my last name. And I just approached him on Facebook. I said, I noticed you have this account and you don't use it. So can you just drop that so I can have it, please? And he said, sure, without a problem. And then he did it. Canadians are super nice.
They're almost I think Clemson fans are the Canadian fans of college football. If you've ever met a Clemson fan, they're extremely nice.
Well, not to Ohio State fans, they're not. That is a rivalry.
No one's nice to you guys, or no one's nice to those guys. No one likes
the nicest fan base. The nicest fan base I've ever encountered is Kansas State. Great people. I would have Thanksgiving dinner with Kansas State folks anytime.
That checks out. I would have Thanksgiving with my man Berm. Hey, I'm sure I'll see you soon. I'm sure we'll have you on soon. I appreciate you for coming on. You can follow his work @Berm on Twitter. As you can tell, very few people know the Big Ten like that guy. I mean, that dude just rat-a-tat-tatted absolutely everything there is to know about the Big Ten. Appreciate Berm for joining us right there to preview or give us the rundown of the Ohio State kind of quarterback battle that is. So shouts out to my man Berms. Again, that's @Berm, BIRM on Twitter. What you guys think about this Ohio State matchup? First of all, very few guests will come on this network and out-studio us or try.
I was going to say.
My man's got a setup, bro. And, not to get brand new. I guarantee it, brand new with regards to his setup. I love that. Guys, if you're producing content, can you give a shit about how you present yourself? I mean, seriously, can you try? Don't come on here with the nonsense.